Aloha, everybody. This is Tim Horan, the Cloud and Communications Analyst from Oppenheimer. I am not quite in Hawaii, but I've been there for the last 8 years. I'm going to dream that I'm in Hawaii today. But this is the Future of Networking and Data Center panel, and I'm pleased to have three incredibly experienced industry people here on this panel. I am not going to give you the intro on them, but I will let each one of them kind of describe who they are and what their company, more importantly, what their company does. So Philip, maybe we can start with you with EdgeConneX. Can you describe what your company does and how you fit in networking data centers?
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Tim. Good to be here with you virtually. Trying to get into the mood with the shirt and the beads and so forth. Certainly wish we were in Hawaii live. Philip Marangella, I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at EdgeConneX. We've been around for about 10 years. We are one of the largest privately held data center operators, with a broad footprint across North America, a growing footprint across Europe, and then a recent footprint being established in South America. We were recently acquired earlier this year by EQT Infrastructure out of Sweden. And so that's really going to allow us to continue our rapid growth and expansion that we've seen this first 10 years and to continue that for the next 10 years and expand to markets like Asia and extend in our kind of existing footprint that we have currently. So pleasure to be on the panel with my fellow colleagues here.
Thank you so much. Avner?
Hi, I'm Avner Papuchado. I'm CEO of Server Farm. We're a wholesale colocation, and really we also provide a lot of services around this. We'll speak about this later to clients. We're in the US, Europe, and the Middle East. We're doing a little bit of a splash in Israel and east from Israel, actually west and east from Israel. Still privately held. One of the few companies that are still privately held around. So proud of it.
Good for you. Gil?
Great. Aloha from New Jersey. So Gil Santley, CEO and founder of NJFX. NJFX is a 5-year-old company. We're also privately held. The mission of the company was to provide facilities next to where cables actually land, subsea cables. So we opened North America's first carrier neutral cable landing station campus, and we do retail services. So in essence, you've got a subsea cable project, you want to land in North America, we have existing front haul, we have existing board pipes available, we've got a tier 3 facility built out, and we've got a meet me room. And think about connectivity on steroids, because connectivity is all about interconnecting networks. And a subsea cable is probably the biggest network you're ever going to interconnect. We're talking about 300 terabits per fiber pair per system on a subsea network. And we've got multiple subsea cables. So originally with the 2 TGN cables that went from New Jersey out to the UK. Several years ago, Seabras went live with Seaborn as the operator, Telecom Italia taking down 3 pairs on that system. And most recently, the Hafu AEC2 cable, owned by Facebook, Google, Aquacomms, and Bulk, interconnected New Jersey for the first time in 20 years to the North Sea, where it landed in Denmark, Ireland, and Norway. So we've got 3 continents interconnected in 1 retail facility. And we've also been able to execute on getting all the major terrestrial North American providers to come in and interconnect. So we're 60 Hudson, call it the new age version, the way it should have been to begin with. The biggest connectivity was always New York City because subsea cable landed in New Jersey and Long Island. We've taken the place where they land and we've brought the carriers to connect with them. So I'm proud to say that in our 5th year, we've got a lot of exciting new customers, a great ecosystem. And yes, we do miss being in PTC. It'll be the first year that I've not gone in 20 years to PTC. And next year we will return and be back.
Well, like myself, once you go to PTC, you're going back. You're going back for sure. Bill, are you online there, Bill?
Yes. Sorry. We're actually driving back from down South Florida back to Jacksonville. So apologize for the late entry there.
That's fine, Bill. Do you want to talk about your company a bit here?
Sure. Our whole concept for Edge Presence is that, we're trying to get ahead of the curve for edge data center world, where, the ideas of latency is going to be important for things such as 5G and things in the next few years. I mean, everybody's heard that story, but really our scenario is different in that we're not depending on the carriers to come for us. We're actually going out to tier 2, tier 3, and even in some cases tier 4 markets with national customers that are interested in being in these markets for either A, their own existing customers, or B, for them themselves to get ahead of the low latency requirements of the upcoming internet revolution as we look at it. So from our perspective, we're going out and putting in the easiest word is modular data centers that we're custom building, different sizes depending upon the market and the need and the interest before we get there. Edge Presence is not, we're not being speculative. We're going where customers are asking us to go. But it's working out pretty well for us so far. We've got 10 sites that we're currently working on now that are in some form of progress, with the buildings being built, leases, and even the edge data centers are already being placed and online. So I have to apologize just because I got asked to do this yesterday. So I've kind of listened to some others and make sure that I'm on the same page with everyone.
Well, you're doing a great job, Bill, and you sound very good. Thank you. Thank you. We're all improvising here during COVID. So I was going to ask everybody 2 questions at the same time. How is business, and what's your secret sauce? How do you differentiate yourself versus your competition? And we'll start once again with you, Phil.
Yeah, look, I think we in the data center space are very fortunate. It's one of the shining lights in the midst of the pandemic and the economic crisis and so forth, right? And for us, this has been our best year ever, in fact, right? And with that said, though, what's driven, obviously, networks are needing more capacity. The cloud guys need more capacity because our homes are the new edge, right? We're working, studying, exercising, streaming, gaming, everything at home, right? And so this is driving the need for more and more capacity, particularly at the edge, right? As you're trying to alleviate those bottlenecks to ensure that everybody's kind of quality of service and experience continues to, meet the necessary expectations, right? So it's definitely been a great year for us. But that said, a lot of the trends that we see are that we're driving the future growth, we're kind of coming to roost and accelerating, right, as a result of COVID, right? People are accelerating their cloud transformation, right, and accelerating some adoption of other things. And so it's not going to why I say that, it's not going to be a kind of a dip back to, the previous kind of growth rates. There's some of these other things like machine learning and AI and telemedicine and virtual reality and cloud gaming and on that are going to continue to drive demand for more and more data center capacity, network capacity, and the like, not only in the US, but around the world, because that's another area of growth that we're seeing is international in particular, as service providers look to scale out. Now, in terms of our differentiation, that's it, right? It's about our customers and our service provider customers of giving them what they want, when they want, where they want. We don't necessarily speculatively build our facilities and say, hey, come to us. We work with them to define what their edge is, and be a micro edge to a hyperscale campus and everything in between. This is the kind of facilities that we've kind of built out around the world for our customers. And so they like that, being that kind of partnership and collaborative effort to, kind of define and locate the exact data center locations and the builds and that meet their timelines and so forth. And that's been kind of our secret sauce for success.
Avner?
Yeah, so it has been a good year. I agree with Philip. We are very lucky. We're where growth is, and you know, I feel bad and try to order in as much as I can from all the restaurants and go out when they let me. We try to help our customers get into places where it's a little bit harder to build. There's a lot of markets that are still, you know, we're working on edge, but there's still markets like you know, cities in Europe. You know, in Israel is a harder market to build. This before we get to the secondary, there's still a lot of primary that's pretty difficult to get into. We help people get in there. We help with the network. We help with everything physical in the virtual world. So we provide our customers a view or down to the server of what they're using, how they're connected, what are the possible server problem scenarios, overloads, and so forth. We warn them against all the bad things that can happen. We worry all the time, so nothing bad happens, and we provide great service. And we've been lucky, that just like other people on this panel, that our customers let us know where they're going, and we can grow with them.
And Gil, how's business? And we kind of know your differentiation. You have a monopoly there. I hate to tell you that, but congratulations. That's a very brilliant move. Yeah, but yeah, how's business?
So that is our secret sauce, being a monopoly, and we don't abuse it. You know, we realize customers have choices, and you know what Tim is kind of relating to is that there's only certain places you can actually land a subsea cable, right? A lot of thought has to go into where you put this. You got the seabed, you've got history of what the shore does in that part of the United States, for example. You know, how reliable will your cable be placed in New Jersey versus Virginia versus Florida versus Massachusetts? So when it comes to New Jersey, we really do stand out, and we advocate for our state because we've got all the secret sauces already blended in, the interconnection play. If you want to monetize that cable, you want to come to an ecosystem. If you want to provide resilience and diversity to that network, then you have to come to a place where you have lots of backhaul options. And that's not easy to do. And that is our secret sauce. What happened this year was interesting, right? So COVID created winners and losers in the enterprise space. Some companies did a pretty good job transforming their networks and be able to take all those employees and rehome them into their homes. And some didn't do so well. And it's not so public, but if you start asking around where the management changes happened, you'll figure out the losers pretty quickly. We're seeing multinational banks for the first time coming to a cable landing station. Why? They can't afford to not know how this all works anymore, right? So when things that are unprecedented happen, and all of a sudden you got to go to management and say, I can't have everyone on a video conference at the same time on a Tuesday, you better have to explain why the other banks are figuring it out. And what we've seen is that they've come in, they've ordered 100 gig IP ports, they've ordered hundreds of them, and they're interconnecting and they're getting on multiple subsea cables. Outages are no longer an option. Your data is only as good as your access to it. So we've been lucky to kind of get those enterprises to embrace the model of knowing how your network works and then getting them to collaborate together. And then we don't always have the best options for them. We'll say, look, take some space, do some things here, but protect yourself. Go to Virginia, go to Long Island, you know, get yourself in many places so that you don't have an issue one day when something goes wrong on one part of the continent somewhere or the other. So, you know, our secret sauce, unfortunately, is a monopoly to some degree for the geography that we have. But we also recommend to diversify your network because you need to make sure it always works. And the thought of a bank losing trust in its customer base, you know, then what do they have, right? The same way a big OTT, if it doesn't work, you have very little patience. What are you willing to give them as far as an application? And we provide that clarity and resilience to know exactly how your cables are interacting with your terrestrial networks. And we let you compute. We've got a campus. We have 58 acres to play with. So if EdgeConneX wants to be my neighbor, I'm happy to give them some land next door, let them set up shop and do what they do best. You know, if Avner wants to come by and be a neighbor of ours, be part of the campus, we have no issue letting guys do what they do best. We want to be the interconnection play for server farms and EdgeConneX.
And so, Gil, just remind me, how many undersea fiber cables are at your landing station?
We have 4 subsea cables interconnecting our facility to 14 terrestrial networks that leave the facility throughout North America.
Got it. Brilliant, brilliant. Bill, how's business? And I comment on it, but you know, what is your secret sauce? What's your niche out there?
So first, I want to say that I love what he just said, that outages are no longer an option. I think that was great. I think that's really important for all of us. So our year this year has been really great. I mean, there's a lot of, if you really knew the underlying reasons behind a lot of announcements that come out in the industry, and if you really knew who was really behind helping teach these industries and these companies, some of your large cell phone tower owners, for instance, you know, we've been consulting with them to help them learn the business and understand what to do and how to do it. If you actually, you know, if someone really looked at our books tight, you would see that we've obviously been very successful at convincing very large companies to understand that we know what we're doing. And also recently in October, you know, we had the announcement where we had a $30 million investment from DataBank. And I think that honestly speaks for itself with regards to the success we've had this year and how our model, you know, appears to people who actually really know what they're doing. So I feel like we've done a great job this year. And really, you know, there's a lot of different ways to look at our secret sauce. But honestly, I really believe our secret sauce is the opposite of a monopoly. Our secret sauce has actually been that we're willing to talk to everyone, because in our opinion, the way this is going to go down, no one company can satisfy all these needs that are out there for all the industries, all the carriers, all the, you know, just literally the customers. No one company's ever going to be able to do it. Even, you know, the largest Bell company that ever existed, it is not going to be able to handle this, what's really needed to be done. So what our take has been is we've tried to be, you know, carrier agnostic, landowner agnostic. You know, we have relationships with all of the major cell tower operators to, you know, look at them first before we have to go look somewhere else for land, places to put everything. And I believe that, you know, while there's a couple of different ways to look at it, one is, you know, if you let somebody know or, you know, touchy-feely your customer base, then you're going to lose your customer base. But in reality, you know, we've been really successful. We've sold into, you know, other people's spaces that we help them build, and we've got customers that come to us. And I think, you know, I'll have to make sure we're okay to mention their name, but you know, Aleph is one of the customers that we've actually literally helped them get anywhere and everywhere we can possibly help them get, whether it's our space or not. And I believe that's a good, successful, you know, in the world we live in today, I think that's a great, you know, philosophy on our perspective, just to try and help everyone and not just to try and be in it for ourselves.
Great, great. So the reason we have this panel, the most important question is, what are we seeing in terms of, I would call it technological transformations in data centers and network to kind of meet the future growth of the next decade? You know, what's happening with the underlying physical infrastructure and underlying physical technology? Phil, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, at the end of the day, Bill and Gil also touched on it. It's ultimately, it's about the user experience, right? And what we're trying to solve for. And the way the internet was, it's always traditionally been this kind of download-centric, unidirectional model, right? Hence the advent of CDNs and the like. But now you're seeing so much data being created at the edge, consumed at the edge, and so forth, that there really needs to be this re-architecture of the internet, right? And this is the role that data centers, in conjunction with the network, can help alleviate those bottlenecks to support those emerging use cases and everything, right? From the cloud to the content to the TikToks to whatever, right? Because a lot of that data, that content, that information that is being created at the edge needs to stay either at that edge, go to another edge, or back to the core, and vice versa. And so to help alleviate those bottlenecks, this is the role that we have to collaboratively solve for, right, with these ecosystem partners to build out a much more distributed architecture to support all these different workloads and the volume and the velocity and the variety of data that's coming down the pipe. So that's certainly key as we kind of build these things out. The second thing is, and I think COVID highlights it, is, as you shrink that form factor down, a lot of these data centers, like a lot of our original data centers, were lights out. And so you need a robust DSIM platform that allows you to remotely monitor and manage your data centers, right? And see, for a service provider, not only one, but their entire footprint across multiple markets and multiple data centers. And for us, that really, came to roost in COVID when, data center engineers and the like couldn't travel, couldn't get to the data center, yet they were happy with this Edge OS, our DSIM platform that we built, that allowed them to kind of maintain that business continuity and remotely monitor their infrastructure and submit tickets for service remotely and all that kind of stuff, right? So that will, that's a kind of key thing that will grow and have further need for in the future for a lot of these edge and far edge data centers. So that's just one aspect, and I don't want to take up too much time, and I'll let the others comment on some other components as well.
Avner?
So we definitely see the data centers getting denser, and the hyperscalers are people actually are using density. I mean, we've been talking about it for years and years, but we actually see density actually happening, which is very interesting. They're obviously getting bigger. Most data centers are getting bigger, and we also and more efficient. There's redundancy is getting right sized. We used to be in a plane in the equivalent of having planes flying around with 8 engines. Now most people have 2. They understand that it carries you above water if you know how to run the infrastructure. So data centers are getting more efficient and pricing is getting right as well for customers. Also, the reliance on operators and operators have, there's a lot of more money in this business. Operators are getting sophisticated, and they're providing more services. Like, we have managed DSIM platform as well. We call InCommand. We actually run more IT outside our data centers than inside our data centers, because a lot of our customers, once they experience it, want to see it everywhere the same way. So we run a lot of our customers' infrastructure everywhere, so they don't really care where it is. Our customers really want to run applications. They don't really care about they care about the infrastructure when it doesn't work. It's like having an ear. You don't know you have it until you have an earache. My job is to never get them into a problem. So we run a lot of their infrastructure in our data centers and ours. We help them buy network and procure network and run network. And network's getting interesting, and it's a little bit behind compute. It's going to be interesting to see in the next couple of years how network catches up, how older fiber is changed, and how network really. I think there's more content coming that networks can handle. And I think we're into a whole new network revolution. I see some hyperscalers trying to build their own network around the traditional cross-connect centers and trying to get around monopolies and build their own. And there's going to be a very serious need to upgrade capacity. And that's going to be very interesting. This is a very young business. It's just starting to know what it wants to be when it grows up.
Avner, that is really, really great commentary and color. Thank you. Just as you're buying networking, how has that buying changed from 2-3 years ago to now?
The big deal is software-defined network, right? Is software-defined network that can actually that is actually more of what you eat, what you use, shorter term contracts that are well defined in their usage. It used to be that people have to commit to very, very long contracts. It still happens in the cable, and there's different players. The market's getting much more sophisticated. Some people are buying long and selling short. Some people are doing a combination thereof. There's just so many more options of how to buy network, and the market's getting so much more sophisticated that it needs to be centralized. I mean, a lot of people who used to buy their own right now leave it up to somebody else, and there's only few people that have the volume to actually run and operate and pay for networks. That's why you have content providers owning most of the new cable.
You sound a lot like Enron 21 years ago. I think they had the right. No, I don't mean. I meant in terms of bandwidth trading.
Yeah.
You know, they had a vision, which I think they were just 25 years too early, but it sounds like it's starting to happen now.
It seems like it is, and technology is trying to democratize network. Obviously, there's a physical real estate aspect to it, which is very respected. It's hard to get around, but it's starting to get to volumes where people are spending the money to try to build more efficient networks. And we have to remember there's still large portions of this world where network has to start over, right? I mean, it's just starting, which gets interesting. They can start up right.
Gil, where do you see the biggest transformations occurring in data centers and networks?
So just to address the monopoly kind of label, monopoly only because we've got a great product that people enjoy being a part of. We're kind of an anti-monopoly. So you wouldn't be a customer of NJFX unless you were making money. The direct correlation with being a customer of NJFX and return on your investment. I don't have a customer in the building that's not selling services and making a return on their capital. And that's what we do. We celebrate our customers' success. So if you follow us on social media, you follow our announcements, it's always about a new market entrant coming in, being part of the ecosystem and monetizing not only the assets in our building, they remonetize their entire network globally. It's a new point on their network. So in the data center space, typically it's a cost center, right? I'm investing capital to get, some sort of return over a long period of time. My customers do make an investment, but the returns are usually immediate. They're just monetizing what the capabilities really are. So we're a data center by design, but we're really an interconnection facility. We can support compute applications, and we do. And we have a campus where, once again, we're open about having neighbors. If someone wants to put a data center right next door to us and they want to interconnect to our facility, we're happy to have them do what they do best and be an open environment. So interconnection, I think the edge, I think 5G, I think new routes in telecommunications using subsea along the coast are all part of the equation going forward. You are seeing an evolution. These handsets that we have are going to become like what your TV was at home. You have it with you all the time, and you're constantly in communication at a whole new level. That will require more compute on a distributed basis. So I believe in the Edge Connects model, get closer to your customer. Will it require additional compute? Server Farm will address those markets globally. They're going to be part of it as well. Everyone on this panel has a role to play in how this industry will evolve. Now, I'll give a question for our group, if you wouldn't mind, Tim. So where does the price pressure come from, right? Because I think the customers we all have are always looking for, hey, what's the metric to kind of get a better price? I can try and grow my business. And what we've seen is you've got to be smart. You got to put your capital to work, because ultimately we sell space and power, right? End of the day, that's what I'm providing my customers. I've got to drive my costs down by getting creative with other sources of energy, such as natural gas, converting over, buying off the grid at different times of the day when the price of electricity is lower, doing some renewable programs. Those are the kind of things that I'm seeing. I was curious on the panel, are you guys getting hit on prices? And when you do, how do you go about reducing your costs? It can't be labor, can't be taxes, can't be the building. How are you reducing your costs?
And before we get that, Gil, Infrastructure is critical, and infrastructure is location based. I used to be a civil engineer. I worked on the monorail at Newark Airport, you know, monopoly. I built high rises in Manhattan, kind of monopolies, the Lincoln Tunnel, the Garden State Parkway, which you and I lived on for years and years. Sure. You know, those in essence are monopolies because we can't have, you know, the road going to my house is a monopoly. The electric line, the water line going to my house is a monopoly. But there were just definitely certain infrastructures that by nature are monopoly-like. And if you're fortunate enough to own them, you know, don't be embarrassed by it.
No, but be respectful. And I just wanted to point that out, that it's about keeping your customer base happy. Nobody wants to feel held hostage. They want to enjoy the part of what they're doing, and they're making doing it. And that's what Phil, I wanted to point out.
Are you seeing any price pressure out there, Phil? Or I always think pricing is not really the right terminology. Are you seeing kind of gross margin pressure? Can you lower expenses more faster than price declines?
You know, that's a good question. I mean, I think if you're solving for the customer's problem, right? And I think Gil touched on it too, right? Like, you know, I used to work at Equinix as well, and you know, we would get challenged around the price we would charge for cross connects, and you know, we tried to flip the equation that for every cross connect to that customer, that's revenue for them, right? And so there's value in that, and trying to make it a revenue center rather than a cost center. And how do we work with our customers to help them grow their business? And so you don't get caught up in, you know, I think markets like, I live in Ashburn here, and you know, this is a competitive market. There are a ton of providers all competing for those large footprint deployments. But if you have a differentiated product and you have a less competitive market, I think pricing is a little bit more stable, and you know, normal, if you will, right? And there's these markets like Ashburn and some others around the world that there's just so much competition, and you see kind of this race to the bottom, and providers hoping they make it up on the back end with, you know, some other potential customers and so forth. But overall, again, you know, I think things are pretty stable and pretty solid in, you know, a lot of the markets we're in, not only in North America, but particularly internationally.
Avner?
I see our customers actually being, you know, wanting us to have a good business. We would like them to have a good business. I really don't see hurtful price reduction. I think, look, interest rates helped us a lot. Cap rates around the industry changed. Valuations changed. There's a little bit of a discrepancy between return of capital and return on capital we got to think about. But I think it's pretty healthy, and I think the providers have tried to push, and a couple of times they got into trouble and with a little bit too much pushing. And I see some willingness to give and understanding that the companies that serve them on long term have to be healthy.
And what are you seeing on the pricing front, Bill? Do we still have you, Bill?
Bill is muted.
Bill, you might be muted.
So from our perspective, to the host, to get those costs down up front and get these individuals and carriers, you know, to understand why we're there. And that I think we had a really interesting conversation with a major fiber provider yesterday, and I was pretty impressed. The guy really understood what we were saying, and he brought it forward and said he was going to take it. And he was their chief revenue officer, and he goes, "We have to be in this together." And I think it was great. We were able to tell a story, and he got it. So when we go to talk to customers and enterprises, you know, it's interesting because you've got the people like the hyperscalers that we've talked about previously on the call so far. You know, they're looking for the super, super cheap everything, you know, super cheap power, super cheap space, super cheap bandwidth. And I just don't think that's the guy to be in the edge data center, because quite frankly, our prices are not super cheap, and we don't expect them to be. If you want it super cheap, then great. Buy the whole facility from us, get all 10, 12, 15 cabinets, and we'll make it super cheap. But, if you want something, small, you just want to be there, then it's at least at minimum the current retail price of a big box data center, if not a little more. So I guess, from my perspective, we're being a little bit, we have the ability to be a little bit choosy on it with who our customers are. And, ideally, that's up to our company and us to tell that story to the people that are our customers and make them willing to be able to move forward with us.
So, Phil, I'm trying myself to figure out what edge compute means. Like, what does Microsoft need to do to have, there's a lot of articles written, they're going to have a cloud PC out soon, which is basically a virtualized desktop that can run over, really, really thin device, just a piece of glass, hopefully, ultimately, that costs you like $50 instead of, $5,000. Or, they have cloud-based gaming, and there's many, many other products, and everyone else does too. I mean, 5G needs they promise a really low latency. Like, what do we need to do? And what is Microsoft and Amazon? Amazon with Wavelength with Verizon is building out closer and closer to the edge. What do they need to do to enable this whole new intelligent edge? And what type of new services and applications should we expect?
So good question. I mean, I brought it up before around user experience, right? And it's about bringing that cloud to the customer. It's ensuring that user experience is such that, whatever application that they're running, on-prem and so forth, that in the cloud, as you're putting much more production workloads and diverse amounts of applications into their cloud, that they're going to, work properly, right? And so it's bringing it to the customer rather than trying to bring the customer to the cloud. And that's what we're trying to enable. And I touched around, those bottlenecks and so forth. And so we're seeing these use cases and deployments already underway about, bringing it out further in this kind of distributed cloud architecture. For these guys, like, look, that's the new competitive landscape, and that ecosystem that they're trying to bring this integrated solution closer to the customer, and it's fast. And we often talk about latency. The equally important, if not more important, element is the cost. The network cost associated with connecting to the cloud is massively significant, right? And so if you can also significantly reduce the cost for the customer, that TCO from a cloud adoption perspective is much more appealing, right? And so, I mean, I think that's the other, it's obviously performance, and then underlying is the cost elements by bringing it much closer to the end user, which are the drivers for Microsoft and Amazon and Google and all these guys having a much more distributed cloud.
Avner, what does Microsoft need to do to create this intelligent edge that they're talking about and all these new cool services? Like, how many more edge data centers do they need? What type of real physical infrastructure do they need?
So the real answer is I have no idea. But I can but what I see is I see a lot of industries that are still living in the 70s. Like healthcare is living in the 70s. Every major hospital you see still has a server room in their bottom floor, because there's no place in town that's connected diversely enough and safely enough so people are not dying in surgeries because there's a cable cut. Simple things as that still happen. You can think of every industry in the world, arts and entertainment, video production. It used to be that 10 millisecond was good enough, and it wasn't that much, but it's getting to where it's not. That's getting closer. So there's more and more applications that need to get closer and closer. These days, I still see them, people solving problems like LA. They're not yet looking at solving problems like San Diego. But those are coming. I still think that primary cities, Barcelona, LA, Paris, are trying to be solved. I think edge down to neighborhood is still a few years away. There's still major metropolitan cities that need to be solved for, but edge to where hospital clinics can become diversely connected and safe to be in the cloud is coming. And it's going to be a major network, and it's going to be a problem that this industry will have to solve, and an opportunity, obviously.
So Avner, you're saying we need a lot more infrastructure investments in fiber in these new data centers and redundant fiber, not to put words in your mouth.
The way I see it, yes, definitely. I think if the current network all really tried to provide 4K TV, it would break. There's not enough network to provide just 4K TV, something we think we have.
And Gil, by the nature of your business, I'm sure Homeland Security is very involved in making sure your facility does not go down. But is there a government role here to enable this new cloud, or I call it fog of the future, intelligent edge, kind of compute and all the fiber and infrastructure that's needed?
I mean, the U.S. has always paid attention to international communications, but you're correct. It's the new border, right? How traffic comes in and out of the United States is what a cable landing station facilitates. And we do enjoy special treatment and support from our government to make sure that we never go down, whether it's fuel, whether it's folks, whether it's vaccines, whatever it is, they care. It's on the radar. It's one of the benefits of being at a cable landing station. To Phil's point earlier, to Avner's point earlier, the enterprise customer is getting more sophisticated, but they've got a long way to go. They still have those little data centers inside those hospitals. And unfortunately, they're very important for them, and they're not that reliable. And the folks that are there don't have the expertise to really do a good job for them. I think that's where everyone on this panel kind of shines, right? Having that hybrid solution. So get your best customers that have those SDN access points into Microsoft, Azure, and Google, and then allow those customers to have a sophisticated world-class installation. It's kind of the best of both worlds. Let them hug those servers while they can also offload to the cloud, surges they're going to have in their compute. If you can try and couple it with a site that's well protected, that your country cares about, you kind of hit a home run. And we do offer that because, telecommunications, network connectivity is critical to economic success. A quick story for you. I was touching my Wi-Fi today, trying to get ready for my daughter coming home from college. I took down the internet, the phone, and the TVs all in one shot. I've never heard my wife scream as loud as she did for half an hour. There's a snowstorm in New Jersey. There's no one coming to fix it. If I couldn't fix this thing, I'm not sure what would have happened, right? The idea of losing your connectivity now, whether you're at home or a business, it's not acceptable. And getting access to your data, whether it sits at server farm or EdgeConneX, you've got to get a way to get access to that data. So having more facilities, having better network connectivity, and knowing how it works are the magic ingredients to never having a situation of stress that I had this afternoon.
Well, we are just about out of time. I just want to thank all the panelists here for both your hard work over the years and enabling cloud infrastructure and communications infrastructure that is really world-class. And I think, to Avner, to your point, we're in the first or second inning of this build out, and maybe the first inning of all the applications we're going to see. We didn't really get to touch on things like artificial intelligence, robotics, drones, all the things that I think are going to be amazing. But thank you for all your color, and I appreciate you, Bill, even especially on such short notice, joining us from the road. And we'll end with Bill here. Bill, any last comment that you want to add here for the panel?
I do want to say that I think that I'm actually pretty impressed by the panel, to be honest. I feel like everyone's inside my head. I feel like everything everyone said is exactly what's been going on and why I believe that we're going to be successful, why we're all going to be successful. And I think that the industries will understand that we can do it better and faster and more efficient. And while their initial cost may seem like it's bigger, they're going to understand eventually that we bring something to them that they just cannot get any other way. And I think that's what Edge Presence is betting on, is that we're going to bring things to people that they can't get. You know, in a small town, we can bring them a Cogent or a Hurricane Electric where they can get, you know, a 10 gig circuit for $1,000, you know, and all they got to pay us is a cross connect. I don't think they're going to get that any other way. So at the end, I think all of us putting this whole thing together, the infrastructure together across the ocean, across the country, you know, big box, small box, whatever, it's all going to work out, and everybody's going to understand that we're in it together.
Well, hopefully I'll buy all 4 of you a drink in Hawaii next year. And Gil, this is going to be my first year in 25 years. I am not at St. Pius for Christmas Eve. So I know you know that place well.
Sure, I do. Yep.
But thanks everyone for joining. We'll see you next year.
Thank you very much.
Aloha.
Thank you very much.
Aloha.
Merry Christmas. Yep.
Cheers.